My name is Evelyn Hart, and I've spent most of my adult life behind a mahogany bench, listening to liars unravel beneath the heat of their own contradictions. You'd think I'd be immune to cruelty by now, hardened by years of calculated manipulation and courtroom theatrics. But no courtroom prepared me for the kind of cruelty that arrives in soft silk and sisterly smiles. The kind that looks like love but cuts like disdain. It happened on a night so polished, so deliberately perfect, it almost felt like a set piece. An engagement party hosted beneath glass chandeliers where crystal glasses chimed like lullabies and violins hummed from the corner like a heartbeat you couldn't quiet. Everyone in the room was either powerful, pretending to be, or married into someone who was. Jonathan's family, the fiancé, dripped old money and practiced grins. They floated through the room with inherited confidence, toasting the future as if they'd already signed off on it. And then there was me, the older sister no one bothered to introduce properly, the one they referred to as quiet, like it was a character flaw. I arrived precisely on time, not a second early or late, in a tailored black dress. Simple, elegant, the kind of outfit that demanded neither attention nor apology. I'd worn it to court. It never failed to silence a room. I had barely crossed the marble floor when she saw me, Camilla, my younger sister, flawless as always in a champagne gown that clung like intention. Her eyes caught mine across the room. She tilted her head just slightly and smiled. Not a smile of welcome. No, it was the kind that says, "You don't belong here." She leaned into her circle of pearl-draped friends, whispered something behind a manicured hand, and they turned to look at me one by one. Curious, dismissive, amused. I didn't flinch. I've seen men with blood on their hands try to charm a jury. I've watched families disintegrate under the pressure of one well-placed lie. But that night, under chandeliers and crystal and the scent of perfumed ambition, I learned something new. The cruelest betrayals don't come from strangers. They come from the ones who know exactly where to aim. People often mistake silence for weakness. They assume that if you don't push back, you must not be strong enough to fight. But the truth? Some of us learned long ago that being invisible is safer, cleaner, easier to survive. Growing up with Camilla meant learning how to disappear. She was the sunbeam in every room, the clever darling with the perfect pout and just enough charm to get away with anything. "Your sister has such a way with people," they'd coo, usually after she'd lied herself out of trouble. Meanwhile, I, Evelyn, was the intense one, the too serious child who read in corners and asked too many questions. I knew how to sit still at the dinner table. I knew how to disappear into books that didn't belittle me. By high school, Camilla had already crafted her version of me, the boring sister. She told people I was adopted, held parties I wasn't invited to, mocked my outfits at dinner while our parents laughed along. "Evelyn just doesn't know how to let loose," my mother would chuckle, sipping her wine. My father never looked up from his plate. No one ever asked what I wanted to be. As long as I didn't cause problems, I could disappear. So I did. I studied. I dissected arguments. I learned to control the room without raising my voice. While Camilla floundered through a communications degree and charmed boys like party favors, I graduated early. Law school followed quietly, efficiently. No applause, just a letter from the admissions office and a roll of my suitcase across state lines. When the judge I clerked for shook my hand for the last time, he told me I had a voice like thunder in a whisper. At 38, I was appointed to the bench,
Superior Court, 11th District, the youngest in my district. The local paper ran my story on the front page, right beneath a photograph of me standing in front of the courthouse, robe folded in my arms. I mailed a copy to my parents. No one called. But by then, the silence wasn't a wound anymore. It was familiar, predictable, almost peaceful. I had my chambers, my gavel, my nameplate, a life that needed no validation. In court, people listened when I spoke. At home, I was still just the sister in black.
The invitation came scented, a thick, glossy envelope, trimmed in rose gold with Camilla's name etched in calligraphy that tried too hard. Inside, it read, "Join us in celebrating the engagement of Camilla Hart and Jonathan Pierce." No mention of me, no +1, not even a handwritten note. Just the scent of overpriced perfume and entitlement. Then came the text. "Hi, Cess. Don't feel like you have to come if you're busy. Jonathan's family is, high profile. Try not to wear anything too serious, okay? XXXC." Too serious. The phrase echoed for days. She had no idea how serious I'd become, how many lives I'd reshaped from behind the bench, how many men in custom suits had trembled as they called me Your Honor. In her mind, I was still the girl with secondhand shoes and a too formal voice. They never asked who I had become. So I bought a dress. Tailored, elegant, black, always black. Rented a car, declined the hotel room she offered, booked my own. For the first time in a decade, I walked into the lion's den, not to belong, not for her, but for the silence, the one that had followed me for years. The estate was perched on a hilltop, all reflective glass and moneyed restraint. Manicured hedges, valet parking, the kind of place that wasn't designed to feel warm, just expensive. I arrived 5 minutes early. Always 5, never more. From the car, I watched guests arrive in dresses with price tags still pressed into their linings and shoes that had never touched city pavement. Camilla's world, or the one she borrowed. Her name was printed in gold on the welcome sign. Jonathan's was beneath it, smaller. That told me everything I needed to know about their future. Inside, the air smelled like peonies and pretense. The hostess, blonde, bland, and obviously briefed, handed me a champagne flute with a nod and no recognition. Perfect. The room sparkled with chatter. People with glossy teeth and matching laugh patterns floated from corner to corner, orbiting Camilla like she was the sun. She was stunning, I'll admit. Gown clinging just right, makeup immaculate, that effortless social grace that had always been her superpower. But I couldn't stop wondering how someone so full of noise could still say absolutely nothing. I spotted our parents from across the room. My father, older, grayer, still as emotionally evasive as ever, present but not involved. My mother wore a dress that belonged to someone 2 decades younger and a necklace I'd sent her years ago, a gift she never acknowledged. She looked at me, smiled vaguely like I was a face she'd almost remembered, then turned away. No wave, no words. I found a seat near the corner, behind a centerpiece of orchids the size of a small car. They didn't want to see me. I didn't want to be seen by them. Then came Camilla. She glided toward me like a swan that knew it was being watched. Air kisses, polished nails, fake laughter. "Well," she said, eye scanning me from head to toe, "look who made it. I wasn't sure this kind of thing was really your scene." "It usually isn't," I said, sipping the champagne. "But I had time." Her eyes flicked to my dress. "Black, huh? Bold choice for a celebration." I smiled. I figured someone needed to ground the palate. She blinked, unsure if I was joking. Then she leaned in, voice dipped in condescension. "Just try not to make things
awkward, okay? Jonathan's family is big on appearances. They ask a lot of questions. I held her gaze. Then maybe they'll get some real answers. She let out a theatrical laugh. Classic Evelyn, always so intense. And just like that, she flitted away mid-giggle with a woman in heels too high for dignity. Intense. That word. The one they'd all used my whole life as shorthand for inconvenient.
I was picking at a plate of smoked duck when Jonathan approached. He looked like he'd been molded in a political lab. Clean cut, polished, teeth like ambition. The kind of man who probably practiced empathy in the mirror. "Evelyn, right?" he asked, offering a two-handed handshake. "Camilla's sister." I nodded. "That's me." "She doesn't talk about you much," he admitted. "Wasn't sure if you two were close." I tilted my head. "We're sisters." He chuckled, unsure what to do with that. "She said you do something in law." Something like that. There was a flicker in his eyes. Curiosity. But it passed. She had probably told him I worked in some county records office. Paralegal, maybe. Something useful, but forgettable. Dinner gave way to toasts. Camilla's friends stood one by one, giggling through syrupy speeches packed with rehearsed affection and references to wild high school nights. Camilla soaked it in like a flower under stage lights. I stayed seated, still, unmoving, a shadow at the edge of the performance. A woman across the table leaned over. "Are you family?" I nodded once. "Yes." She offered a vague smile and turned away. At one point, I heard someone ask Jonathan if Camilla had any siblings. He shrugged. "She does," he said, "but they're not close." I didn't even blink. Let them have their version of me. I knew the truth, and I knew how to hold it quietly. Then Camilla stood. She tapped her glass with a fork, her sequins catching the light like signal flares. Everyone turned, phones raised, smiles lifted. "I just want to thank everyone for being here tonight," she began, beaming. "Truly, I feel so lucky." Cue the applause.
"I know this might come as a shock," she giggled, "but I wasn't always this put together." Growing up, I was the wild one. My sister Evelyn, she was the opposite. So strict, so serious. She once filed a formal complaint because I borrowed her sweater without asking. I was 13. She's always been that way. Judgy, rigid. But hey, I'm just grateful she showed up tonight. She's not exactly a fan of family events or, smiling. She looked directly at me, held the gaze, winked. My fork rested against my plate. I didn't react. Then Jonathan joined in. "But really, we're lucky she made time. I mean, Camilla said you work in, what was it, county records?" He smiled, like he'd included me in some harmless inside joke. "Maybe administration?" he added. "Sounds like important paperwork." It wasn't even an insult. That's what made it worse. It was small, casual, a quiet erasure. Camilla smiled, pleased. I wiped the edge of my glass and met Jonathan's gaze. "I'm sorry," I said evenly. "Where did you hear that?" He blinked. "Camilla mentioned it. Government office work?" I let the moment hang. The air tightened. Their confidence began to waver. "No," I said. "That's not correct." Camilla laughed nervously. "Oh, come on! Don't be so dramatic." "She's right," I replied. "I don't work in office administration." Another pause. Longer now. "I'm a judge."
The silence after my words, "I'm a judge," was thick and immediate, the kind that shifts the pressure in a room.
making the air feel heavier. You could hear the clink of a fork dropping 2 tables away. You could feel the recalculations happening behind every widened eye. From somewhere near the bar, a voice broke the hush. "Wait, Judge Hart? Evelyn Hart?" Heads swiveled. A woman in a green satin dress blinked at me, her expression slow dawning with realization. "The Eastman case," she whispered. "She sentenced Eastman." More murmurs, a ripple through the glittering pond of the party. Phones slid quietly out from clutches and clutches. Google searches tapped out beneath linen tablecloths. A man adjusted his tie. A woman beside him paled slightly, as if remembering she'd laughed at me minutes ago. Camilla stood frozen, her smile stiff and cracking around the edges. Jonathan was staring like he'd just realized there was a map behind the painting, and it led somewhere far more impressive than he'd assumed. "You're a judge?" he said. This time, no smile, no charm, just confusion and a bit of awe. I nodded once. "Superior Court, 11th District." His hand slipped from Camilla's back. Camilla tried to laugh. It came out forced. "I mean, you never mentioned that. I thought you were doing something small, local stuff." I turned toward the woman near the bar, the one who'd recognized my name. "You handled the Eastman case?" she asked again, louder this time. I inclined my head. "Among others." Gasps, then silence again. And something else. Respect. Camilla faltered. "I didn't know you were still doing that. I mean, I thought you gave it up." I stood slowly, deliberately, folding my napkin and setting it on the untouched entree. Every move carried weight now, not because I exaggerated it, but because the weight had always been there. They just never looked long enough to see it. I turned to Jonathan. "When people don't ask questions," I said softly, "they shouldn't be surprised by the answers." He said nothing. Camilla's mouth opened, closed. She looked at our parents. My mother was pale. My father actually looked at me. And for once, his expression wasn't indifferent. It was hollow. They hadn't failed to see me because I was invisible. They failed because they never looked. I walked past them all, past the stunned faces and cracking facades. There were no raised voices, no dramatic exits, just quiet gravity. I didn't stay for dessert. There was nothing sweeter than the silence I left behind. Outside, the night air felt cooler, lighter, clean. The kind of quiet that doesn't scream for attention, just exists, steady and real. As I approached my car, my phone buzzed. Once. Twice. A missed call from my mother. 2 texts from Camilla. "You should have told me. Why would you embarrass me like that?" As if facts were weapons? As if telling the truth, when asked, was an act of violence. I didn't respond. They hadn't asked who I was for years. They'd simply decided I was too cold, too serious, too distant. It had been easier to reduce me to some shade that made their own lives look brighter by contrast. But truth has a way of shifting the air in a room, and when truth walks in, there's no need to shout, no need to demand the stage. It arrives on its own terms, calm and unyielding. That night, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't need to. There was a time I would have given anything to be seen, to be applauded by the family that raised me, to have my success toasted with clinking glasses and sincere smiles. But somewhere along the way, I stopped needing their applause. What I built didn't require permission. It didn't need a family name or social status or polite smiles. It was built on tireless, often thankless work. It was built in early mornings and late nights, and a voice that cut through courtroom chaos with quiet authority. And now they would see it, even if they never admitted they were wrong, even if they never apologized. They would see. Epilogue. Inside that glittering hilltop estate, I imagined Camilla already rewriting the story, reframing the narrative, telling herself I ambushed her, that I was petty, cold. Jonathan, I imagined, would be quieter in the days that followed, maybe a little less smug, maybe starting to realize that his wife-to-be didn't just have a sister. She had a sister who had built a world without needing a single favor from any of them. My parents? I didn't know. Maybe they'd talk about me now. Not with warmth, perhaps, but with curiosity, with a belated awareness. I didn't need their approval. I had earned my life, every inch of it, not because they believed in me, but because I did.